right, everybody, welcome to the Marty O'Donnell Show. This is going to be a very special episode. I hinted at it last week. I think I've been hinting at this idea for a while. My guest today is Ross Scott. Uh, and we had a great, nice, long, in-depth discussion on something that is near and dear to my heart. And he is the founder and father of the movement, Stop Killing Games, which I have a hard time believing anybody is against the core idea behind Stop Killing Games. I've seen the other arguments. I've seen some of the reasons why maybe this isn't a good idea. None of these things make sense to me. It's just common sense that we should stop killing games. Now, how we stop killing games, how we enforce this, how we what the solutions are. These are things that are up for debate. But I think the core idea behind games as a service and just shutting down servers when people have no idea it's going to happen, and the game you bought and paid for and you're having fun playing, just suddenly you wake up one morning and it's gone and you have no recourse. That's just unacceptable. And I think he has shown a spotlight on it. He's gotten over 1.5 million signatures in Europe alone for different initiatives. And I think it's great. So I've for a long time, I've been following this. For a long time, I've wanted to talk to Ross. I pinged him in an email a few weeks ago, and we immediately got on a Discord chat together. And I realized I needed to have a podcast with him so we could talk this issue through. As you guys know, I'm potentially I am running for Congress, so I could be a congressman out of Las Vegas who actually has this as an issue. And perhaps the federal government will have at least one person in Congress who understands the issue of Stop Killing Games. And so let's watch this discussion. All right. Hello, everybody. This is Marty O'Donnell, the Marty O'Donnell Show. And my special guest today is the great, everybody is recognizing him because they've seen him so much in this very black, dark, almost ghostly room that you're in, because you're just almost a disembodied head at times. Ross Scott, who is a hero to so many of us. I was not really paying close enough attention to what was going on for a while. I've been sort of semi-retired and I have my own complaints about the game industry. But Ross represents people who play games, and he is the guy behind this movement, Stop Killing Games, which I wholeheartedly support. And Ross, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming.
Hello, thanks for having me. Yeah, the lighting, it's more like I can keep this consistent, because if I were to have like nice lights for my situation, I would be a silhouette talking to you essentially. So it's like, see, right now it's evening. So if I were to like open the windows some, it'll look good. Then in half an hour, I'm getting dark, and then I look like one of those like masked identity videos.
No, I don't think you should change it. There's a sort of ambiance that's associated with your videos, which I think are great. Well, Ross, I'm living in Las Vegas. You live now in Poland, is that right? Yeah. And so what are we, 10 hours difference? It's quite
9, but about a third of the way around the world. Yeah.
Yeah. So I appreciate you coming on, and this is evening for you and morning for me, so that's great. Congratulations, by the way. I saw I think it's one of your latest blurbs about what's been happening and how you're sort of tapped out. I think your energy has been, you've been doing this now for almost, let's see, 1.5 years solid.
Since January of last year, pretty much.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And I'm sure it's been sort of a passion of yours for a while, because I've seen some videos of you talking about this issue that goes before you started the movement. Is that right? Weren't you talking about this like with Richard Hogue?
I think the first video I made on it, like to the public and everything, was in 2015. And then it's been kind of off and on since then. I mean, I guess you could call it passion, but it's more like it's more like I kind of wish this just wasn't even a problem to begin with, you know?
Yeah.
My passion is for other stuff. This is more
Yeah.
like it's like something that bothers you. It just doesn't go away until you finally try to fix it, and then it just
Yeah.
keeps escalating, you know? So
Well, we spoke on the phone a couple of weeks ago, and then you said, "Well, here's what I actually enjoy doing," and you sent me some stuff, and I watched some of your using game animation engines to make stuff that you're thinking about. In the one, I think about the guy getting lost in a town and asking for directions.
yeah.
That was really creepy. I gotta say
Oh,
that was
thanks.
great. It should be like a Dark Mirror episode or like a flashback
Yeah, I
to
was
the
going
old
for kind
Twilight
of a
Zone.
Twilight Zone feel
Yeah,
to it, you know.
yeah.
Stranger in Need is the name of
Yeah,
it. People want to see
Stranger in
it.
Need. It was excellent. It's certain there's images in there that are like sticking with me. So nice job.
Great.
Which is what I can see. Like you're a creative guy. You want to do sort of fun, quirky, creative stuff,
Yeah.
and you know, so I think what's interesting to me is that I think what you're touching on, and you touched the nerve, obviously, with the public. Tell me how you went from just sort of complaining about it to doing something tangible. Like it's really amazing when I saw your map of the world and all the different initiatives and laws and whatever you call them, all the different things that are going on around the world that are in support of the Stop Killing Games initiative or whatever you want to call it. I mean, congratulations. You got almost 1.5 million signatures, which have yet to be completely verified, but it seems like you did overkill on that. So congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah, it's been a process because what I kept hoping, originally I was hoping there was just a lack of awareness in the industry that oh wow, we didn't plan for this. Whoops, I guess we got to fix this, because things like that can happen, you know, in the games industry where they didn't realize that, oh, we forgot this is still connected to the DRM servers. Now the game's unplayable once we end support or something like that.
Right.
So I was first trying to like get attention on that. And then over time, it became clear to me the game industry didn't care. And then I tried to sort of raise, again, it would just kind of go up and down as news would pop up, that something I could talk about I was hoping to try and get a critical mass of gamers kind of caring about this so that some sort of legal action could be taken. And I kept trying and nothing would happen. And because again, I'm just some guy making videos. I'm not an expert on any of this.
Sure.
But what really happened was I kept kind of waiting for an opportunity to strike on this. And like, I think I mentioned on the phone to you that it's kind of like a sniper just waiting for their target, just waiting for hours and hours, just for them to stick their head up. Like, like they don't have a shot, but they're waiting for that shot. And that shot came in the form of a game called The Crew, which is a big racing game published by Ubisoft. And that checked every box for having a chance to take action on it, because it was a big enough game that a lot of people still had proof of purchase. Like even among my audience, there would be enough that we could send thousands of complaints to consumer protection agencies.
Yeah.
And it was easy. The whole game was completely shut down. It wasn't like a DLC stopped working or the multiplayer stopped working. The whole thing shut down. So that meant regulators who might not know anything about video games could understand what was going on here.
Yeah.
And the most important part maybe was Ubisoft's in France, which means it's subject to all kinds of consumer protection laws that, just don't even exist in like the United States or Canada or something like that. So I was just, when that went down, I figured, okay, like if there's any chance to take an action on this, this is it. And then it led to a lot of research trying to figure out, okay, well, how do we report this? Because this practice, I guess I should let people know what this is. Stop Killing Games is a movement where, you buy a copy of a game, and then at a undisclosed time in the future, the publisher remotely disables it, but they keep your money, and then you can never run the game again. Yeah. And a lot of people have come to just accept this is the way things are. I never really accepted that. It just always rubbed me the wrong way. So the thing is, while that is more or less legal in the United States, it just hasn't even been tested in many other countries, especially in the European Union and also Australia. That's another place we've been pushing. So I figure, I hate this practice because it's led to games being effectively destroyed. You can never run them again.
Right.
But I figure, well, if the only reason this is happening is because we're not doing anything about it, we're just not telling the authorities, well, that's a problem I can maybe solve,
Yeah. So. Well, it's funny because I think I can see kind of where the erosion happens. And, I've been in the game business for a long time. And I've been a gamer since day one, right? So I was a gamer at the very earliest moments.
So you would have been an Atari or...
I'm pre-Atari.
So like Odyssey or just some mainframe at a university or something.
Well, actually, the very first game I played, I think the very first game I played was some sort of Magnavox something, which was Pong, and it was like, oh my gosh, me and my friend stayed up all night, and when we were in high school playing this Pong game because it's like, can you believe we're actually controlling the TV instead of watching the TV? That was like a huge thing. And that same friend then, after we had graduated college, now I'm giving away how old I am. He brought over this a modem. These are things you don't even know about. It was he had a heat sensitive printer that was mobile, right? And it was hooked up to a Cradle modem, and my mom's old Cradle phone thing was stuck into these little suction cups, and he dialed into the mainframe, and up on the heat sensitive printer, zzz, 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 going back and forth, it says, you're standing in front of a White House. There's a mailbox there. Yeah. So this is pre-Zork. It was I think it was called Dungeon, or I forget what it was. It was shareware, that was going around, floating around the mainframes. It was the very first, I want to say Infocom, but it was Infocom ended up taking over the text adventures. So it was these, interactive text adventures, which could get really, really deep. And some of the best game experience I've ever had in my imagination was playing through some of these text adventures. But what I was going to say is, like, what happened was when Infocom became a company and they took over the idea of having text adventures on a computer, you would buy a box. Now think about this: you're buying a box, and there's just a program in there that's a parser of text, and so they had to dress it up. So they'd have a comic book inside, and they'd have little tchotchkes, and like there'd be, magic stones with codes on it. So you had to have something tangible in the real world to actually finish the text adventure. So you couldn't just copy the text adventure.
Like the code wheels or something.
Yeah. So there'd be every once in a while, say, go, get your magic decoder ring out of the box, and so you can keep going.
Or type in the word on page 83 of the manual, paragraph 5. I came in a little later than you, but the earliest stuff I was playing was Commodore 64.
Okay.
And then DOS, and then stuff after that. So not as early, but not too far behind. So.
Well, by the time I was playing it on PC, it was just regular old, Microsoft DOS games. It was DOS prompt games. It was before Windows even. But anyway, the point is that you can't really play those games the way they were intended today. When you download, in one half of a second, you download the entire Infocom game library because it's all text. Because you get to those points and it'll say, go to page 83 and paragraph 7 and the fourth word backwards, or whatever the code is. It'll just be inserted in there. Yeah, here's what you have to do. So you're not getting that same experience you had. So I think gamers, and for example, like, I got obviously, the Nintendo family unit playing Mario and Zelda. You have the cartridge, and it's a tangible thing you own, but you also have to have the hardware that plays it. And it really only works on an NTSC, old-fashioned monitor. And eventually those things sort of obsolete out. and not, I mean, have you been to Japan? Have you gone to any of
No,
the
I've never been to
places in
Japan.
Tokyo? I mean, if you want to have your mind blown by the number of game cartridges for every possible system that's ever existed, there was so many more in Japan than ever got released to the world, and you can find them in Tokyo, and you realize these will never be played again. You're buying these little tangible cartridges because they're collectibles. In order to play them, you actually have to find the hardware that it worked on. I mean, you got to get the little handheld thing that was unique to that or whatever it is, so you can play that. But you sort of understand that going in. You kind of understand that you're going to get your satisfaction out of the game. And eventually, over time, things might become obsolete, and not everything's going to get preserved. You know what I'm saying? This is why I think it
yeah,
was
but
like,
it's kind of an indefinite thing, like if you bought a record, a music record or
exactly, yeah,
a CD or something, yeah, if you just leave it lying around and like the pet's running all over it, yeah, it's not going to last too long. But if you're careful with it, it could go decades. It's kind
right.
of a lot of the burden is on you at that point. So.
Well, and that's what I'm saying is I think that like I finally threw out my 8 tracks, my 8-track cassettes. Because you know what? Nobody has an 8-track machine. Even there are more, well, this isn't that current, but digital audio tape, DAT machines were the thing. They were going to be the thing that everybody was going to have, especially in the pro realm. All studio professionals like saved everything to DAT because it was the first digital audio tape. Well, that got surpassed and supplanted right away. And so you might have a whole library of DATs, or even I forget. I used to call it the REO Speedwagon. I forget what it was called. It was REO something. It was this cartridge disc that was before writable CDs. And
Like the
so
mini disc?
I have what was it?
Mini disc? Or
No.
okay.
But it doesn't matter.
This might have been
there
too specialized for me.
Have you heard about jazz cartridges
Yeah,
and
I knew
jazz
jazz
drives?
cartridges.
Yeah, I mean, so I have a whole box of jazz cartridges, which are chock full of like really valuable stuff, but I don't have a jazz drive. Like I don't have the hardware that can, can actually
It's
read
kind
that
of
anymore.
Yeah, it's kind of a spectrum of like how desperate are you? Like if these are just
Exactly.
priceless, you can find some guy
Yeah, I
on
will
eBay
find
or
somebody.
something who will have a
Yeah.
drive that you can hook it up to and get the files
Yes.
off and transfer it to something
Yeah.
else. But if it's something where like, oh, this is a copy of an AC/DC album, maybe it's better to just get the high quality remastered digital copy and just bite the
Yeah.
bullet on it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's the same. I don't know. It was one of those weird things where I realized I still have my vinyl collection sitting in them. I've been taking it with me since my college days. My wife, of course, has allowed me to pack it up every time we move. And like, what are you doing with all these vinyls? I'm like, they're valuable to me, But at some point, I no longer had a turntable. So it was a few years ago. I'm like, I'm actually going to make a vinyl record. So I had to go out and find a really good turntable and stuff that worked and an amplifier. And it's interesting to see the vinyl coming back. I think there's a certain amount of desire of consumers to have something tangible that they own. But there's always I guess what I'm trying to say is consumers sort of have gotten used to the idea that maybe not everything is forever because other things change. Even though I still have the cartridge, I still have my Mario cartridge, I don't think I have a functioning Nintendo game machine. I have broken ones.
Yeah, but I guess
sort of in my head, I know I could probably find one if I looked hard enough.
Say that cartridge was one of those one-of-a-kind rare games from Japan that it's not even documented on the internet, and this game's neat. You're probably going to jump through some hoops figuring out how to at least play it or else back it up in another form or something like that.
Well, so here's the thing. I guess what I'm saying is that we sort of were used to having things that we sucked all the life out of them. We played them to death. We owned them. And then we moved on because technology advanced or whatever it might be, that things happen. And we always know in the back of our mind, if we really wanted to, we could find a way to play that thing again. but I think the industry took advantage of that, especially when, and here's where I think it really made a turn for the worse. And that's when software companies decided that it was going to be software as service rather than software as something you own. So when that as service came in, that was the first, like, we should have all, our antenna should have gone up and said, oh wait, what's going on here? Software service. We're not buying the software, we're buying a license to use the software, and they will upgrade our versions that we have. And it seemed like, well, this is a great service. It's software. I want the latest version. I don't want to have to keep buying a new version of Word. I'm just going to have a license and they'll just keep upgrading it. And so that was the first, when software became a service rather than you own a thing. And the EULA on that was acceptable, right? You didn't say, doggone it, I want the very first Word 1.0 and I want to be able to have no capabilities of what I'm, so
there's a big gap between.
That's the software thing.
Yeah, there's a long gap between the 1.0 and it going to a service, though.
Yes, I agree.
It's hard to say. Yeah, because with the service, I think it's not the most consumer friendly, but I feel like the best compromise I've seen is, like, you buy the software and maybe they give you updates for a year or something. And then if you want more updates after that, then you pay like a reduced price and get that. Or you can just stick on, if you're on 3.0 and they've moved on to 5.0, you can still keep using your 3.0 version. Right. I feel like that's the best compromise, because then the customer can still keep what they bought. But if the developer, needs more money to keep the lights on, you can pay them for new work or something like that.
Yeah. Well, I tend to be sort of a hoarder when it comes to technology. I don't know why. My wife doesn't either. But I pulled an old Mac SE out of the closet a few years ago and turned it on, and it booped right up. And I immediately started playing some old Mac solitaire game, which was right there, and it was happy to be played again. So there is something really sort of satisfying about going, oh yeah, it's still there. It's a tangible thing. It turns on. I can play it. Oh, there's the old version of Dark Castle, and now I'm playing the Dark Castle in black and white on my old Mac SE, and but once games decided that they were going to go to this service model, it snuck in to an industry where the consumers were used to one thing, and I don't think they realized what they were accepting, and that's where I think the corporations took advantage, because they saw,
for sure.
Yeah,
it bothered. I saw this extremely early on, but it was always kind of like, well, I hope this is just a couple one-offs and this doesn't become a trend. That's really how I thought of it a long time, because I guess the first services probably go way back with what you were talking about with the text adventures. Was it the MUDs?
Yeah.
I mean, some of those you had to pay, I think you had to pay for the internet time. And for some of them, you had to pay for the month you were using it too. I forget. I'm not sure what the first actual subscription game was, but it could have been pretty early on.
Yeah.
But see, for a while, it was just those. And then later you had the MMOs with EverQuest and Ultima Online being big ones. And those things looked really cool to me, but I thought, well, man, I don't know what the price was, 10 or 15 a month or something. I'm thinking, well, I'm not going to be able to play that. And it just kind of stayed stuck in the MMO realm for a while. And I think I still need to, actually, I'm not sure what the first non-MMO to do with this, but it was definitely within the mid-2000s that they finally started introducing it into other genres. And then it kind of crept in more and more from there.
Well, the thing I noticed it with just as a game developer, in 2001 we shipped Halo, and we had to, with all the games you were shipping, you had to test the hell out of things, because what we called RTM, release to manufacturing. It was what we called a gold disc.
Yeah,
It
go
was
gold.
the
Yeah.
disc. You were going gold. Here's the RTM date, all these different things. And it was like the bits that were on that gold master, those were the bits that are in your hands. Like, Ross, you own the bits that we tested if you have a Halo disc. And there was no changing that. That's what we shipped is what we had to live with everything, including anything that would crash. So if we knew we were shipping with some sort of crashing bug, that was anathema, right? We tested things like crazy to make sure there were no crashing bugs. And if there was, we would, it would only be acceptable if it was such a rare set of circumstances that we knew it wouldn't ruin people's experience, hopefully. But the idea of being able to ship something and then do day one patches, that was just not a consideration.
I see a day one patch as a confession that the game wasn't actually ready when it shipped,
Absolutely.
Because of course there's bugs you're going to miss, but if it's day one, that means, and there's a lot of stuff, not just like, oh, we spotted this line in the code. That means like it wasn't ready,
Right.
There's some stuff you're never going to know until you do get user feedback,
Yes. Yeah. Well, so what I'm saying is that like there was a discipline to game development and publishing that was by necessity, right? So once the technology allowed us to do, hey, we could do a day one patch if we have a problem. Well, at first it's up to the developer and the publisher to be really disciplined and say, we're only doing day one patches because we find some horrible thing after the release to manufacturing. But we're going to keep the discipline exactly the way it was. This is going to be rock solid. And then it started creeping in because it could. It's like, well, here's a feature where it's not quite done. Well, we'll patch it on day one. We'll put that as part of the day one patch. So you started getting lists of things that were withheld from the RTM version that would be, we'll put this in the day one patch, which means no one will notice it. No one will know that we didn't have a finished product on disk because they can't even play the product on disk. As soon as they stick it in, a day one patch has to be downloaded or you're not allowed to play, which means the real game is being, shipped to you through the ether rather than on the disk. And I saw that start to happen and I was like, I don't think this is a good thing.
See, I thought more pressure for that would have come from shareholders saying, okay, it's not completely done, but it's almost done. We could ship it now, get our sales in this quarter, and then, you guys can fix it later. Let's do it. And I thought it would have flowed like that. You
would think so, but I'll tell you, it has to, I think at least at the beginning, it had more to do with the desire of the developers and the game makers. They wanted to have these features in and they just weren't able to get them in. See, like for us, this was back in the day when, there were two significant dates every year. One was E3, because you had to go to E3 and show your best stuff to everybody who was going to eventually, buy the products and put it on shelves. That's who E3 was for.
Christmas is the other one, or?
And Christmas was the other one. So as developers, we weren't like, oh, well, that's okay. We'll just push the date out to February 2nd. Like, no, we knew that we wouldn't make a living if we weren't in there at Christmas time. So those dates meant a lot to us. And if we had some feature that we thought was important, but we couldn't get it in, once that day one patch idea came out, we're like, oh, this is great. Because it used to be, you had to RTM, your gold disc had to be like September in order to hit the shelves
go through the
Christmas.
Manufacturing process. Right. Yeah.
And once we saw, we could do an RTM, we could do a Gold Master in September, but on December 10th, when all the kids are buying it, and on Christmas Day, when they stick it in their box, we can stick something in that we fixed, 5 days earlier, so that day one patch was something that, so they could have the experience we wanted. And that gave us an extra 2-3 months to screw around with things. But I just remember thinking this will be taken advantage of, because when the corporate heads and the stockholders understand that they can ship stuff that's not ready, they will take advantage of it. And I think you're right. But believe it or not, I think a lot of a lot of the very first taking advantage of it came from the desire of developers to make sure they got all the great stuff in at the last minute.
Yeah, because it wasn't really an option until I'm not sure what year, where there was enough people who did have good enough internet that they could
Yes.
download that patch. One
Yeah,
of
it
the
was
videos,
probably 2007-ish, maybe 2008-ish, where it really became a thing because of high broadband.
one of the videos I did was talking about an old game called Sin, and the game's pretty good,
Yeah,
but
it's a
it
shooter,
got
right?
panned at the time because they did exactly what you're talking about, where it was a buggy mess.
Okay.
The first patch I remember was about 50 megs, and everybody listening is probably saying, "Oh, yeah, so what?" That was kind of unheard of back then because
Yeah.
that's when the whole game came on one CD. So it was like
Yeah.
650 or 700 megabytes. The
Right.
thought of like a patch
Downloading.
having 50 megs of just bug fixes, that's like unthinkable. like that.
Well,
So,
well, the other thing that happened was a patch that was a small, 50 megs out of 750. That changed to the point where by the time you have the I don't know if it was the Xbox 360, whenever broadband became ubiquitous, and especially with, let's say, for me, my recollection would be probably PlayStation 4 era,
for sure by then.
Xbox One, the official Xbox One era with everything online all the time. The patches were not patches. They were the entire game. You were downloading the entire game because it was easier, because like the way data is, stored and organized and stuff, you can't just write something in the middle of something. So instead, you couldn't have just a little pile
pointing to it that needs.
Yeah, it was just like, oh, okay, well, just here's another 750 megs to download, or here's 5 gigs or whatever it is now. Like, it's just so insane. Which is why most of the time you come home, you get your new game, you get your new console, you stick it in, and then, oh, we're going to update the operating system. We're going to update. Now, you can't play this game because you have to wait 3 hours to download it. And you're downloading the entire game. Even though you think you have a disc, you have nothing tangible. It's all being downloaded on day one.
Yeah, going back to what you were saying earlier, I'm actually of two minds of what you were talking about with the cartridges and the physical thing. On one hand, just on like sort of a lizard brain level, I like the tactility of it, just slapping in something into a cartridge or hearing like the chunk, that sort of thing. But on the other hand, I really do like the convenience of having it all on a system and having things like emulators to go back and think like, oh, this is great. I can, adjust the ratio, or hey, I could turn up the saturation or something if it was.
Yeah.
So I like, but so I as long as there's a way to back it up, but with somewhere I was going with this, but then I lost it.
Well, I mean, the tangible thing I was going to say, so if I do this, do you know what I'm doing?
Yeah, of course. You're blowing the dust out of the cartridge and maybe making it worse in the long term.
Exactly. That was one of those things, and then I remember there were cartridge cleaners, like you could do, and there was like special stuff you could do to keep the life going. But it's like, I think there is something about the tactile, and I bought this thing and the thing is here and it's on there. I remember my realization came on what could happen with Destiny when, of course, there's a whole story behind me getting fired during Destiny just before it was released. But one of the things I remember complaining about and being, saying, I think this is a problem, I think this is a mistake, was that once you play, for example, you play the vanilla Destiny, you can't play that anymore because it's been, they've replaced pieces of music, they've replaced actors' dialogue lines, they've replaced missions, they've completely vaulted things and it's like, who's in control of this experience? It's like, we're giving the fans this experience, but it's like, yeah, a year later, we decide that you can't have that experience anymore, but we're going to give you this better one, supposedly.
And you
And
gotta
it's like, well, there's something about that that bothered me. I just thought that's not the what we should be doing.
and you gotta figure. I mean, one, the players don't like that. If there's extra, say they're really into it, and they're like, what? There's extra stuff I can't access that's already
Yeah.
been made, you know. But I would think the people who worked on it, it's like, oh yeah, all this work you did, yeah, we're just threw it away now. It's like, yeah, thanks. I
Yeah.
mean,
No, it is. I mean, that's a whole other, we might get to a conversation on that later, but what I'd like to do is like talk about this idea, and I know you've talked to Richard Hogue, who's a friend of mine. He's the game attorney.
that was a while ago, but
Yeah,
yeah,
it was Hogue Law. I might actually see if I can get him on and talk about this stuff too, because I think he's a good guy. He's a gamer. He understands, but he's also a lawyer, which means he at times doesn't speak English. So I'll call him on that stuff. But the thing that's about lawyers, especially the United States, and he brings this up, which is the importance of a contract is like sacred. Like if you have signed a contract, yeah, it doesn't matter if you say, I didn't know what I was signing. You signed it. That's it. American law, jurisprudence, that's the end of story, right? That's the American way. And it's very harsh at times. I've had my own fights with contract law and I've won. So I've even been able to win even when the contract went against me. One of the judges that ruled in my favor said it was a violation of good faith and fair dealing. So there's this extra layer out there, even in America, where like,
yeah,
Marty, yeah, you
unconscionable.
signed this bad contract and you complete ignorance, but it's even more than that. There's this good faith and fair dealing thing that floats above everything. And if you can prove that somebody was, sort of tricking you into signing something that wasn't fair and was not in good faith, you can still win. So I still think there's hope in America, but I think even better than that, I'm gonna go on a little tangential thing here.
Sure.
Have you seen the Netflix documentary Poop Cruise?
No, I haven't. From the title, I'm not sure it's one I'd go out of my way to check out, to be honest.
It took me a while to finally watch it, and I think I watched it since you and I spoke. But it is about this horrible cruise. Carnival Cruise Lines did this cruise. It was in these cruise ships are absolutely huge. They're floating hotels and casinos and nightclubs. They're just unbelievable. Well, believe it or not, so of course the story is this cruise went down into the Gulf of Mexico at the time, now Gulf of America, but it was down there cruising the Caribbean and it had a fire and like everything went bad.
Oh, was that one where it just everything went wrong and the captain was just kind of running out and?
Yeah, it was
Okay.
it was a total disaster. But what happened was all the toilets, of course, like there was no light, there's no electricity, and all the toilets stopped working. So people had to they were told to poop into these orange bags and they were supposed to pee in the shower. And then, I mean, it's the most disgusting, horrible, it was like a 5-day period.
You're not
that
really
was just
selling me
from
on
hell.
it.
No,
Like,
yeah, no, I watched it so you don't have to. But
okay,
here's what
there we
happened.
go.
I want you to hear this. Everybody who bought a ticket for this absolutely high-end luxury cruise, in the contract, way down, paragraph 252
Oh yeah,
or
I'm
whatever.
sure they had him dead to rights.
So here's what they said. Carnival, the cruise company, makes absolutely no guarantee for safe passage, a seaworthy vessel, adequate and wholesome food, and sanitary and safe living conditions.
Yeah, and the thing
So
is,
imagine.
if they're cruising, they might be in a different jurisdiction when that happens too. So that's all you
They were.
have.
Yeah.
Going back from it.
So it's like the people who like here's what cracks me up. When and I don't know if this is still the case today, but when I was a kid, you went to an amusement park to go on a roller coaster. You bought a ticket. And if you look closely at the back of your little ticket to get on the roller coaster, it's sort of like we make no confirmation that you will have a safe ride, and if your head gets chopped off because of our mistake, it's your problem. I mean, they tried to make it so they were blameless for anything that could possibly happen. And it's like, well, you bought the ticket. And I'm like, no, I was a little kid and I bought a ticket to go on a roller coaster. I wasn't buying a ticket to say it's okay if my head gets chopped off. And I was thinking the same thing, this contract law that lawyers think is so foolproof and they love so much. There's something about the consumers, the thousands of consumers who are going to go, I want to get on a luxury cruise. And the advertising is, look at the giant prawns that we're going to have and the chocolate fountains and the beautiful cabins and the casinos and the hotels. If they put at the front of their marketing, if they said we make no guarantee of safe passage, seaworthy vessel, wholesome food, and sanitary living conditions, like you'd say, well, wait a minute, why are you showing me this? But actually what I'm buying is this other thing, which could be a trip from hell. Like they think they can protect themselves by, doing this legal jargon stuff and say, hey, it was in the contract. We told you could have this really horrible time and you signed it. And this is what I think the EULAs for the game industry, it's the same kind of thing where they think it's okay to say, okay, you're buying this game, but all you're doing is buying a license and we could kill the game 5 minutes after you buy it. And that's in the contract and you knew it. It's like, no, of course nobody knew it. Well, the advertising, the marketing is all about buy this game and you'll have the greatest experience of your life. You have no clue that that's what they're sneaking in there.
Yeah, well, there's a few aspects to that because they're also selling that alongside games that can last indefinitely,
yes. Right.
So
you don't know the difference, right?
Yeah, there's the Destiny right next to the Halo game, which,
right.
Halo, you can boot that up 20 years from now. It should still work if you kept. But not to rain on your parade too much, but I've gone down this road with some U.S. attorneys. Yeah. And the problem is let's say there is a window there where they can say, okay, these terms are unconscionable, that they can just take it away, whatever. Well, the thing is, under U.S. law, as I understand it, that's only going to act as a defensive measure. So what it means is if the contract said we're entitled to your firstborn child, they say, okay, that's too far. They can't, that cannot be enforced.
Right.
The problem is they're keeping core aspects of the game on their end. So the absolute best case scenario from that would be, okay, fine, you have permission to continue running the game, but we're still shutting down the servers and your copy's still bricked. So you have permission to spend, assuming you have an advanced learning in computer science, to reverse engineer the server for the next 5-10 years, and then maybe you can run it again. So it's like it helps a little bit, but not really. But going to that sacred thing, that is very much an American perspective, which is why we're not really doing much in the U.S. and we are focused in Europe and Australia, where contract law is still important there, but it can't override, statutory consumer rights. So in other words, you can put anything you want in a contract, but if it goes against your actual rights or, the law, then that's not going to fly, especially for something that's like a mass-produced contract, like game licenses. It's not like you have a special contract with the Defense Department that's just between you and them for some prototype thing you're doing, So that's... And all those terms that are there to protect them, saying, you're not entitled to anything, and like we can, destroy this for any or no reason. That actually might work against them in Europe because then regulators are gonna look at that and say, well, this isn't reasonable. Like how, you were selling games under these terms, like we're nullifying all of this,
Well, so the two things that I'm getting from this and the poop cruise thing, obviously Carnival Cruise Lines and all these big cruise ships, they're still out there and they're huge and they're even a bigger business than they were, 15 years ago when this thing happened. But what happened was there is a Cruise Lines International Association decided to get rid of that clause because it was highlighted because of this poop cruise, which was horrible. Um, and everybody was like, "That's insane! I can't believe that's what was in the license for us to go on this cruise. It's part of the contract." And so they came up with a cruise passenger bill of rights. And this bill of rights is now the cruise passengers can, and probably most people going on a cruise don't even know this exists, but it does. But I was like, who is enforcing this cruise passenger bill of rights? And apparently, from what I can tell, it's a little bit of a combination of, like you said, there's different jurisdictions, different countries that these cruise lines go through. And when they're in international waters, there's no law that governs them.
Yeah.
So it's the industry itself, the Cruise Lines International Association, that has gotten together and said, hey, this is bad for business. Like, we can't have another one of these kinds of things because people will stop taking our cruises. Let's do this thing. We'll self-enforce. We'll self-regulate. We can show people, hey, you got this Bill of Rights. You're entitled to safety and happiness and chocolate fountains or whatever's in the Bill of Rights. And so they're successful again. And I'm wondering, especially in America, I have a feeling whatever happens in Europe with Stop Killing Games initiatives, it will make no sense for American publishers and developers to have to make one set of rules for America and then a different set of rules for Europe. It's going to be like, it's not cost effective. Whatever is the thing that we have to do, we're going to do that for everybody. And if they were smart, if the ESA or the IGDA or whoever wants to be a governing sort of self-regulating body, if they were smart, they would use this as a marketing moment where they can say, yes, we see what we've done is bad. Here's our new game owners' Bill of Rights, and rah, rah, aren't we great? That's my hope.
That's an optimistic view. I can say personally, I never wanted to do any of this. If they had been self-regulating, that would have made my life a lot better.
No, they're not. They won't. They'll only do it from pressure, which is why I think a grassroots thing that you've been doing is the thing, because it is an embarrassment. It's like a poop cruise. I think the crew shutting down the crew is like the poop cruise.
The number one thing I hope happens in the process, if it goes to the EU Commission, is to get the representatives up there and just start reading word for word terms from various EULAs, saying we can change the wording of this contract you've already agreed to at any time. We can be terminated any time for any reason or no reason, some of them say.
In all universes,
Yeah, or you are required to destroy all copies in your possession once we terminate the game. So I just want to read, I just hope they read a list of that to all these politicians who may not know anything about video games, and they're hearing this, they're like, what? That's what I want, is that just what moment from a politician. Some people, I've seen some complaints saying like, oh, you shouldn't do this. Politicians don't know anything about games. It's like, yeah, but believe it or not, people who don't know anything about games tend to grasp what's going on here better than the average gamer, because the gamers come with all these expectations like, oh, well, yeah, you should have that for single player, but not multiplayer, but for or this kind of multiplayer, but not an MMO. It's like, no, the law doesn't care about any of that.
Right.
Whereas anybody who's never played a game in their life can understand you pay money for something, that they disabled it and they kept your money. So I think it's a great place to start the conversation from. So
yeah, and also it's funny because I met with a group of young guys who are in politics, and I think I told you I'm running for Congress. I have a feeling if I make it to Congress in the United States, I'll be the probably the one and only congressman who even has a clue about what this is. But I think it's actually a bigger issue. I think because I think it's going to be a thing in the present, right? But it's going to go further into the future with all sorts of digital media, from books and movies and television shows and games, and how AI enters into all this stuff. And I think we need politicians who actually at least have a tiny clue about what's going on. Because I know that I'm sure you've run into this, but I've run into this. Most judges have no clue about much that has to do with technology. Most lawyers don't have that much understanding of what's going on in technology. They're always behind the law is always behind what's happening in technology, and so we need some people in there. This is my pitch to go to Congress. Like, you need me there to help Stop Killing Games actually succeed.
Well, strategically, I might disagree, but it wouldn't hurt. No, I mean, the thing is, it's not like I have this desire to push all these regulations for all these test cases.
Right.
I'm just like, can we not destroy the games? Like, I'm very open-minded with how we get there. It's just that the industry has had a just refusal on this for many titles, and they're promising to make it worse. And what you mentioned earlier with them adopting what happens in the EU, it could even be just Australia, where the thing is, if this is planned for from the start, the cost is not enormous. You know, if it's like right from the beginning where, you know, you're figuring out how many levels do we need or what kind of genre is this going to be. It's like, okay, we need to have an end of life build as part of it. And so
I think when you say the end of life thing, I think that is it should be part of the game design that game designers are thinking about. It's not so much that it has to be a bill. It's just it's a discussion that the designers would just automatically have. Okay, what's the end of life for this product we're making?
Yeah,
period.
I've heard it's bad practice to not have a local test environment. And if you have that, that's half the battle right there. But no, there's a real world example of this. In Australia, years back, they sued Valve for not allowing refunds in their games. And Valve lost. So rather than just allow Australians to have refunds, they just made it their global policy because they figure, okay, we lost on this. We don't want to have to deal with this with every court across the world. Let's just bite the bullet and we'll get it over with. And it wasn't apocalyptic to the industry. I think this would be like that. It's like, okay, if we have to have an end of life plan for games we sell in France or Australia, you know what? When we end the game, we'll just roll it out globally, and everybody can download it. Then we'll be done with it, and because they'll have already done the work at that point, and it would be much better PR to just adopt it for other regions as well.
Yeah, and the optimistic side of me also understands that there is the first publisher that says, we will publish no games that can be killed. You know, it's like, then they're going to have an advantage. The consumer's going to go, oh, that's great. I can buy from EA and nothing will ever die. And now, maybe it's, there's an end of life plan for every game we make or whatever it is, because nothing could be eternal. But what we already agreed on is that people want to be able to keep something alive if they put effort into it. But to have it just taken away from them after they paid for it, that's what just seems fundamentally unfair. Yeah. And the companies who say, we're going to do it this other way, and they're going to get a perk, right? The consumers are going to say, that's good.
Yes, but I'm kind of pessimistic on that because I think most people aren't like us where we're thinking ahead like, I want to keep this. I think that most people are just in the here and now. They want to play a game. The game's fun. That's as far as they think on it. And if we're being honest, I kind of feel like that's as far as they should have to think if they want to. Yeah. They're there to play a game and have a good time, you know? Yeah. If you bought a DVD or something or a Blu-ray, I guess it's less true for digital, but, you would just want to enjoy the movie. You don't want to have to think, oh, is this going to expire after 8 years? Or like, what's the record of this company? Like, and there kind of is an example. Well, there are smaller companies that already do that, but I guess it's more of a storefront than a game publisher, but GOG, that's their whole thing is that they're known for any game you buy on there, you can download a copy of it and run it indefinitely. So but they were struggling last year. They had to lay off some people in December. So it's not as much of a selling point as we'd like it to be, I guess. But.
Well, to me, it's going to have to be adopted by the big three, Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft, and then the big other publishers, EA and Ubisoft and stuff like that. They're going to all I think this is why I believe that whether it's the ESA, or the IGDA or some sort of governing body says, hey, the UN has written for consumer. There's a UN consumer protections. There's a UN guidelines for consumer protection. I don't know how well that's universally accepted, but it seems to me that in the game industry, now that they've seen this grassroots movement and 1.5 million signatures in Europe and whatever you're doing in Australia and around the world, this is an issue. There are a lot of people who are like, wait, I thought I bought this game and now it doesn't work. And like, you shut it off and I can't do anything about it and I have no recourse. It's actually that people are in the here and now, but they get a slap across the face wake up call. And it's a grassroots movement that's not doing the industry any favors, right? I mean, the industry is going to say, oh, wait, this isn't a good thing for us to keep doing.
I'd say the industry has a certain callousness too. In some cases, they can have this is hardly the first thing the industry has done that's upset players. I mean,
that's true.
There's like the nickel and diming for all kinds of franchises. Like you mentioned, releasing game. Like me personally, I kind of consider any brand new game to just be a late beta. I'm just thinking, I'll wait till the patches come in. Okay, it takes 6 months, or maybe it takes 2 years. Like I'll just wait. And
if it's a good game, wait till it's like you don't have to be an early adopter.
Me, I feel like it's trained me to just wait.
It has.
I mean, what are other things they're complaining? I guess I guess kind of having like copy paste games of a formula that's just sort of okay, not great, where they're not. I mean, that's more. Anyway, I'm sure someone could come up with a better list than off the top of my head for problems they have with the industry. And I think they're kind of used to just realizing no matter how much gamers complain, they're going to keep buying games unless they cross certain lines. And
well, see, I think what you, here's where I want to encourage you. I think what you have done, because you're not a lawyer, you're not a competitor, you're just a guy who said, wait, this doesn't seem right. And then you got millions of people agreeing with you. And that does get the attention of the corporate suits sitting in their stupid offices, counting their, stocks and stuff. They're like, wait, this could actually affect our bottom line. Maybe we should do something different. And I think a grassroots movement does create attention amongst the suits.
I think they're not too worried about us, or what I've heard. They're not too worried about us. They're worried about what's behind us. Where, like I said, if they have to bite the bullet and have an end-of-life plan, that's something they can adapt to. I've been told it would be easier than GDPR compliance about, the privacy rights and stuff like that. So they can deal with this. It doesn't need to disrupt their business models. It would just mean a little more forethought at the beginning stage.
Yeah.
But see, what I think what they're worried about is, okay, we are going before the EU Commission and they're going to be looking through these license agreements. And maybe this opens up the door for other things that do bring in a lot of money. Like one of the things we're doing right now, in addition to the initiative, is trying to be a writer on the Digital Fairness Act. And part of that looks at predatory monetization in games. Well, now we're talking real money that could affect them. Like what we're doing, that's not going to cost them billions of euros or whatever in the EU market. It's going to be an annoyance,
Didn't the loot boxes become an actual legal thing because it violated sort of gambling issues in some countries?
Yeah, it got banned in Belgium, but I've heard that didn't take too well. Like it's not being well enforced. But I think the government might be coming for a second pass at it. Like in Australia, I know their consumer protection agency is taking another look at like especially the one that always gets attention is like pushing gambling mechanics towards kids, because the parents, don't like coming home and having a $300 bill because their kid was playing some game on a mobile device or something where they buy gems. Yeah. So I don't know if I wouldn't say necessarily done with that. And this is going to put them under a microscope potentially. So I think that's what they're trying to stop.
I think what you just said is, I mean, expecting game developers and publishers to actually care about consumers and actually care about fairness and all, they're not going to care. They're going to care about their bottom line. But if their bottom line looks like it could be affected, or some other area that's making money could be, looked at closely, but all they have to do is sort of, as a group, like the ESRB, that's not a law. The ESRB is, an agreement of the game developers and publishers to say, okay, we'll do this. Don't make laws about it if we can avoid that, right? And I think you're right. If they can avoid having super close-up inspections of everything that they're doing, which could really kill their business, maybe they'll just go ahead and do some easy things, which is it's the smart way to go.
We're really trying to make it as easy as we can. We're trying to. The whole movement is single issue. We're trying to keep it narrow, but if we don't know what government's gonna. Maybe government decides this does need to be bigger, and cover more things. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, I'm a conservative guy, and we might disagree about politics, but like in general, I'm hearing this from you too. You're not saying we need government control and government involvement in every little idea and thing. Yeah. I think that's going to create its own bureaucracy and its own problems and almost always unintended consequences. And most likely games will not be fun anymore if the government is involved too closely. So I don't see you asking for like a ton of government oversight. You're just sort of saying, hey, this doesn't seem fair. And, the idea of having government to read their terms out loud will just be so embarrassing that they'll have to change stuff just because they don't want to be embarrassed anymore.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be a game cop. I just wanted to not destroy the games. This is pretty basic in concept from a consumer, even if the details can be complex, That's really all we're going for. If they do that, I go away, and a lot of the movement might lose steam too if they start doing that. So
no, I'm 100% with you on this, and I don't know how it's going to play out, but I know you sort of feel like you're at the end of your tether or the end of your journey to get it to this point.
Yes and no.
But you're right. It's going to keep going even without you. This is a movement now that you started, but it will keep going, which I think is kudos to you for carrying it this far.
It's more like, we're in like the final lap here, and if we trip, I'll get back up on it. I'll make sure we won't. I'll make sure it gets to the finish line, that for sure. But
all right,
we're through the sprint, I guess.
Well, you're getting a lot of attention. You got my attention, which is like whatever that's worth. I think it's great. Now, here's one of the other things that I think could end up. Obviously, I feel like all these EULAs should be looked at more closely. I think the IGDA or the ESA can potentially sort of self-police and say, this kind of language shouldn't be in EULAs. And, it's not just about making sure some of this language is, up more transparent so the users know what they're signing up for. It's that nobody should be signing up for this kind of language, and they should police this stuff.
And it's really like a narrow part that we're trying.
It is.
The part that we don't like is the can terminate at any time for any reason. That's the part we want off, because it may come up or not. See, I've been actually trying to avoid areas where we could hit hard, but I don't see the results of that leading to the GameStop being destroyed. Like for example, the terms in the contract saying, "Oh, we can change the terms after you've agreed to it." It's like, that sucks, and that does sound unfair, but I haven't seen that be a huge issue for me personally. But although that could be kind of what fuels what you were talking about with them taking out levels or voice acting and stuff like that. So,
well, what happens with lawyers? This is what I'm not a lawyer, but I could play one on TV because I've been through enough lawsuits. And I've even I've seen you actually do some paragraphs and terminology that sounds very lawyerly, which means you've now spent too much of your life looking at legal documents.
I have. I'll be happy if I never have to look at another one after this.
But what lawyers are hired to do is to protect their client from every possible bizarre circumstance. So they try to write these things as, as extreme and as every possible case and every possible universe and every dimension. They have this language that shows up that, number one, makes it impossible for a normal person to read or understand. But it's the job of the lawyer to like convince their client, don't worry, we have protected you from the most fringy,
any
edge
reason or
case
no
problems.
reason.
Any reason or no reason. Like, you start seeing these things, and the lawyers, like, they think, well, that's our job and we're doing a good job. Look what we've done. We've made the client happy and they paid us $1 gazillion. And our clients are now protected from any and all possible things. I mean, only a lawyer could make Carnival Cruise put this, we absolutely do not guarantee you safe passage or decent food or sanitary conditions. Like, only a lawyer could come up with language like that. And the marketing people are like, please put that in small print someplace that no one will ever read, because it's horrible. But lawyers love that kind of language. So it's like, I'm looking forward to talking to Richard Hogue if I get a chance to, because I have a feeling he's going to agree with me about this.
Well, I think, yeah, in fact, I owe him an apology because years back, I made a video talking about this where I was trying my best to interpret like the U.S. understanding of it. I got a lot of it wrong on the U.S. front. I'll own up to that, because in the U.S. they can pretty much do whatever they want. Though I will give him crap because he didn't name the case that kind of set the mold for all this. It's Procedy versus Zeidenberg. A lawyer did pro bono research for us on that last year that kind of laid out what's governing all this.
Oh, interesting.
So, and so no lawyer I talked to mentioned that until like years later. So, there's fault on both sides here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just think it's you have to understand what lawyers are for and how they write contracts, and they write them for the eventual edge case that comes in and could take the whole thing down. So
yeah, but American lawyers could use just a little taste of how EU law works. That would be my only suggestion. They don't need to be experts. They just need to understand like a few things are different. The contracts aren't as sacred there. They're
yeah. And I think that basing it on some sort of consumer protection is a really smart way to go. The other thing I think that I'm hoping will eventually sort of come out of this is the sort of museum side, preservation side of things. The suits in their offices don't give a crap at all about preserving anything for the future. The artists, the creative people, whatever. Like, you've talked about this before. It's like, oh, you just took that thing I spent 3 years of my life working on and you just vaulted it, or you threw it away, or it's gone forever. And you're not even going to let me share my work product with people to show, hey, here's what I worked on. Here's my portfolio. Here's things that I did. Here's an example of a level I designed. Here's some music I wrote for this thing. I was like, no, that's work product. We're suing you. And I'm like, this is tangential and will not get, 1.5 million signatures to protect the creative people. But I think it can help some of the severity, especially when it comes to preserving for the future actual creative works. Like, there should be something that shouldn't make it illegal to preserve people's creative work product.
Yeah, that's 100% of where my own personal motivation comes from on this. Okay. All the consumer protection stuff, that's just the means to an end for my mind. It's just, I appreciate, creative works, like art, music, that includes games, except games are the ones I just cannot preserve of some of them if I want to.
Yeah.
We were talking earlier about the old digital stuff. If I'm determined, I can, if it's possible, I can find a way to do it. But in fact, my favorite, this part is hearsay, but I've heard my favorite supporters of the Stop Killing Games initiative apparently are the developers who created that game, the crew for
Sure.
Ubisoft, because again, this is just rumor I've heard from somebody who knows somebody there,
Yeah.
that, you know, they were upset that, yeah, you shut down this game that we spent years of our lives working on, and we can't show it to anybody. You're damn right we want to be able to show people that. That game was impressive, too, in the sense that I think it's the second largest driving game ever made, and it contains kind of a miniaturized version of the continental U.S., and I've
Oh,
never
wow.
played another game that gives you that feeling like you are just driving across the U.S. like that game.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
Well, you know what? That's interesting. I'm sure it's not hearsay. Knowing the number of developers and creative people that I know, um, they are paranoid. A lot of times in employment agreements, you don't know what you're signing in the small print, and you could be signing something like every idea you have while you're an employee, regardless of whether it's in the game or any part of a game or anything. Like if you have a dream of some cool thing, we own that. Like some of these employment agreements are so severe. And what that does is it scares the crap out of creative people. If they leave that company, they're like, well, it's just easier for me to not have any, like the napkins I drew my ideas on. I burned those. The initial ideas I had for something that never got shipped or was never part of anything, or this other idea I had for a book. You know, I got to start over from scratch because I think that company owns it. Like there's some really severe things. So most developers are not happy with that sort of draconian working conditions, like intellectual property. We own your mind. We own every creative thought
Yeah.
coming out of your body. But you will get this, you will get the stock and you'll get money and you will be able to feed your family. But you have to sign this document. It's unbelievably draconian at times, and it scares people, especially creative people. They're just like, okay, I no longer have that job, so I got to start over from scratch. Everything I've done is gone. That's the way it feels. And that's just part of how these guys think they should run businesses, the suits who do not have a creative bone in their body, by the way.
Yeah, there's really three sides to it. There's the customers, there's the developers, and then there's the publishers and the management side of it. And I think it would be a hell of a lot easier to come to an agreement between the developers and the customers on this sort of thing. But
Yeah, it would be.
that's not where the power dynamics are. So
No.
it's and the publisher side is going to be against pretty much any change, you know, unless it's
Well, I mean, remember, the publishers depend on the consumers to give them the money. They
well,
depend on the developers to give them the product. So the consumers do have a lot of just in terms of numbers. If the consumers grassroots get together and say we're going to stop buying this kind of product, that will get the publishers' attention. You're absolutely right, though. The developers would be happy to. Most likely, I bet you most developers would be happy to fix things in a way that's more consumer friendly.
Yeah, the problem with boycotting is I've never known it to work if the game is enjoyable.
Well,
Going
of
back to
course.
the here and now, I mean, in fact, there's an infamous one, I think it was from Modern Warfare 2, that actually was about a similar issue. When that shipped, they got rid of the ability for private servers at the time. So,
Okay.
you know, you had to connect to publisher. And there was this boycott group formed on Steam. And there's this infamous screenshot where after the game released, somebody took a screenshot of the boycott group, and like over half of them were playing Modern Warfare 2. So in other words, I think they had either they were lacking the discipline or had trouble understanding the concept of a boycott here. So see, that's the thing. I think gamers can do lots of things. I don't have much faith in them not playing games. So
Well, I agree with you
it's
on that. What I'm saying is like, it's a little bit like I think I mean, look at Concord, right? And
yeah.
I had friends who worked on Concord. I know a lot of the people who worked on it. You know, I've worked with Sony. I've worked with the folks over at Firewalk Studios. I've worked with Probably Monsters, the people who work at Probably Monsters. I know those people. None of them wanted to make a game that would be such an absolutely huge failure. Like that wasn't the plan. But that game wasn't boycotted. It just turned out to be like wrong place, wrong time, wrong ideology influencing things. And those movements, I'm not saying that you try to get players to boycott something. It's just that the marketplace will kind of self-correct when people are making the wrong kinds of things. And when you shine a spotlight on, hey, why is this way? And that's why it's not fun, or that's not why people aren't going to play it. That becomes a thing in and of itself. People are like, well, I don't want to play that game. I looked at it, or my friend said it wasn't any good. And it's not so much a boycott as just like, that's just not the game that people are going to buy. And so I'm wondering if eventually the kinds of games that like, was it Ubisoft that made The Crew?
Yeah. Well,
it seems to me that people,
the different developer published it.
Yeah. So Ubisoft made the decision to kill it. They feel like they have every right to do it, but I think they're going to be much more careful about making, another game that has, people find out like, hey, this has the same, hidden expiration thing and the same EULA that The Crew has. Even if we like it, maybe we don't want to buy it because that's not the kind of thing we want to. We don't want to get burned again.
Well, I'm more cynical on that, but okay. I think if it's fun in the here and now, they'll accept anything. Unfortunately,
that's true.
But Concord that's one I haven't had a chance to look into too much, but that one's an anomaly because, like even what we're doing now might not have stopped the Concord. Because
no, it wouldn't have stopped the
They
Concord.
refunded everybody.
That's a thing.
They refund. So if every time one of these games went down, they refunded every customer, then we wouldn't have much of a leg to stand on, or else it would be harder to. And plus, that's kind of a everybody loses scenario,
Yes, it was.
That one's an oddity. So that's not really what we have to worry about too much, I don't think. I think a company not losing, what was it, 400 million or something.
Yeah, it was pushing 500 million from the rumors I saw in terms of between marketing and refunding and development costs and purchase of whatever. I mean, it's a huge pile of money.
I think there's going to be a lot of incentive to not repeat something like that happening.
Exactly.
I think there probably are people in businesses studying multiple factors of what happened here because this is like textbook worthy for whatever happened.
Oh, it is. It definitely is. And I think some of that has to do with like, Gamergate 2 is not necessarily, you don't have to agree with everything about it, but it is a grassroots kind of consumer movement saying, hey, this just isn't what we want anymore. And this isn't fun. And why are you forcing us down these roads that we don't like? And we're talking amongst ourselves and we're having podcasts with other people who agree with us. And it becomes a thing that actually ends up affecting eventually, too late. But I mean, goodness sakes, even Bungie's latest marathon game, it just like, okay, they were making, in my opinion, some of the same mistakes that Concord was making. And the fans are saying, no, we don't like it. We're not going to buy what you just showed us. Now, Bungie has a chance to self-correct now, but it's not because of a boycott. It is because this game doesn't look like it was made with us fans in mind, us gamers in mind. And that's what the gamers are saying.
Yeah, stuff like that sounds like a lack of market research, I guess, for figuring out what is going to be fun. What are people going to buy? I guess the only thing I'll push back on that you were saying was that, the market kind of correcting. The thing is, the way games can be monetized sometimes now, it's almost like a different model almost, where you can have 95, 99% of the players be like, about the game and not rushing towards it. But if you have monetization options for the whales, the people who will spend 1,000 times more than the other person, you just have to make it, they don't even have to be happy. They just have to be addicted. So once you start designing games along those lines, it can go to weird places, where it's not about quality.
We were talking about this. Yeah. This goes back to, Bejeweled and
Farmville
Candy Crush and some. It goes back years now. And, as developers, we looked at that. That's an actual design model, not just about the whales, but the whole addictive game loops. Um, how you legislate that, or regulate that, I don't know. But
well,
like,
that won't be me.
no, but I can tell you I know game designers who are friends of mine who are just like, they're morally opposed to going down this evil path of addictive game loops. But just because, me and my friends say we'll never do something like that, doesn't mean that evil people out there are not saying, hey, this is a way to make money, addictive game loops, let's do it. So
and that one's kind of tricky too, because
yeah,
it's rare when it happens to me, but I love it when a game is so addictive I want to just keep playing it. It's rare, but it's usually addictive because the mechanics are fun, not because, like, I mean, some people might disagree with me. I don't like things like dailies where they're encouraging you to log in every day to get, because that's
the
like,
grind. Yeah.
I'm just like, the game should wait on me. I shouldn't have to like wait on the game, or like treat this like it's exercise or something, where like, so, but you could put all of that under the umbrella of addictive. Like, there's one game I played, was it Dome Keeper? It was like this simple indie game where it's almost something that could have been out of the Atari age if it had really advanced design back then. Where, you're part of it's kind of like Space Invaders, keeping the aliens, and part of it's kind of like mining for ore. That game is addictive, and I love that. Mm-hmm. But it's not addictive in the sense that it's trying to get me to spend, like an extra $5 to get an upgrade or something, so the language, that's tricky, that territory.
I'm not saying there's a way to do that, but I know that this talk about studying how to make addictive game loops and get people to the point where they can't help themselves almost. In order to keep going, they have to push the button to buy more gems. And all of a sudden they spent $2.95, which they never intended to. And then they do that every day for 6 months, and they become a whale. And it's like, that, I don't know how you regulate that. I'm not even suggesting that there is a way, but it is a thing. It is a thing out there. And I don't think people are having fun.
Yeah,
I live in Las Vegas, right? So I mean, I look at the slot machines. The machines people are just pushing buttons on. Talk about addictive game loops. That's all they're thinking about. And the house will always win. And they just keep it just at the edge of they have to give people like, if you have a problem with gambling, go here and call this number. I mean, as long as they do that, they're in the clear. But those games are designed scientifically to keep you addicted. So it's a tough one. It's
like, I guess
affecting it.
Yeah, I'm not. I probably need better terminology, but I like it when the game is so much fun. Like, I'm having to. I can't stop thinking about it because it's so much fun. Whereas,
that's why games are good. The
exactly.
addictive part is still good, but it's
like, I think I have a lot more resistance towards it than some. But it's where you feel you're not really enjoying it, but you feel compelled to do it because it's like you have to check off that box in your head or something. Yeah, that's not fun. I don't like that, but I'm also not a gambling addict. So, if I was vulnerable, I imagine it must be hell for them, because they probably want games to just have a fun time, like a fun adventure or something. And instead, it's like, oh no, I get to roll to get the better gun if I spend $2 more. Like, this isn't what I thought I was going to do,
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if somewhere down the line, super blatant sort of addictive sciences, that are looking at this, and then they're being engineered into the game itself. If those things are discovered, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some sort of consumer protection stuff about that. You can't. I remember years ago I was with, I forget his name. Is it Yuri or something? Not Yuri, a Russian guy he's the guy who invented Tetris, and he ended up working at Microsoft. Okay. He was at Microsoft at the same time I was there. And we were at Game Developers Conference, and it was a panel. This goes back to like 2005 or something, and the panel was on addictive games. And I had worked on Halo then Halo 2. I think Halo 1 and 2 had been out by then, and they were big hits. And Tetris, of course, is classic. It's been around, so many versions of it. And he and I were both there, and we're watching this panel, a round table talking, and then they sort of opened it up to people in the room. And, they were saying, one of the people on the panel were like, well, we're making games, so people no longer want to read books. They want to just play games, and that's a bad thing. And then Yuri goes, I don't know what you're talking about. I make my game. I don't want people reading books. I want them to play my game. And I'm like, yes, you can't change what developers are going to do. I would rather have people play Halo 2 and not go see Lord of the Rings. Like, I'm trying to make it so people want to keep playing my game, right? That's what developers are going to do. We're not going to figure out some way of, putting on the brakes so we make the game less fun. But there is this other side of true, like, what can we do to people who have addictive tendencies to just keep them on this treadmill and force them to keep, take advantage of their weakness to spend money over and over and over. And that I don't think anybody's really looked at very closely. And that might be the next
I
thing
think
out
that's
there.
what the industry's scared is coming behind what
Yeah.
we're doing, because we're showing that we're basically shouting out, government, please intervene on this one issue. And the industry doesn't want to hear that, because then they might have to look at other things.
Well, this is why I think ESA should come up with some set of principles and EULAs that should happen, and end of life, game design minimum standards. If they did stuff like that, I think a lot of scrutiny would sort of go away, and they would be smart.
Yeah, not everyone's as motivated as I am on this too. A funny story about Tetris, you just made me realize, when I was a kid, my parents sometimes had a system where I would just do chores, and if I did work for an hour on something, then I might get like an hour of computer time, for games or something. And I remember when my dad got Tetris, I thought it was fun, and I had several hours queued up. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to play a lot of different games. I remember blowing it all on Tetris. And I remember thinking at the end of it, it's like, well, that was fun, but that wasn't that fun. I didn't mean to spend that many hours on Tetris. I wanted to have some more kind of platforming adventure type stuff. And for me, that was more of the good stuff. But it was just like, I always felt like, wow, I kind of got tricked by this one. So that might have been one of my first experiences of that, where I was like, what happened?
He would be happy to hear that story, because I think that's even how I think they realized that this game had something more to it, because whatever little version of it he did in his office in Russia that he shared with his office mates, it ended up just being this thing that nobody could stop playing. Like, everybody just kept playing it. So he tapped into something that was pretty cool. And by the way, I'm totally in favor of reading books. I'm not against reading books, but I just thought that was a funny thing.
I pretty much read every time I eat, So.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this has been really, really fascinating. There's going to be the creators and intellectual property and copyright laws and all that stuff can be all messed up and mixed into this stuff. It doesn't have to be. I think you've done a really great job keeping the issue very sort of front and center. Stop killing games.
Stay in our lane. That's what we're doing. Yeah.
And I think that's the perfect way to go. And I want you to keep doing that. And you're going to have support. And even if you have to step away from the day to day on this, I think it's got some momentum that's not going to stop. And I think you also have the attention of the public. I think the publishers in their boardrooms, they're paying attention to this. So you might not know
I think we are getting some attention now. The thing is, if I did have, I'm still doing day to day if it really is something important. Like if there's something like a European consumer agency saying, yeah, hey, we think we can talk to some members of parliament. Okay, that's something I really should not drop, something like that. But if it's something like, hey, will you talk about this new crap that's going on in the industry? It's like, well, somebody else could cover that, can't they? That's kind of like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like the Valve, the banks not paying
well,
for...
I didn't need to talk about that one because that one got so big, and there was some crossover with what we're doing.
A little bit, yeah.
Basically, we're already trying to stop that if they're taking away the game from you with no notice and no way to back it up. If they're doing that, then Stop Killing Games will absolutely try to cover that scenario. But if they're just delisting it from a store and then you're going to have to figure out an alternative to credit cards and PayPal, I wouldn't know where to start on that. But
no,
actually, I think that's something where I bet there's a startup frantically trying to fill that gap right now. Like they're thinking, okay, so we can take over this entire market if we can just figure out another way people can pay for the games that don't go through the I bet, because that's money on the table if someone can figure that out.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know. I don't know the details on that one. It just seems kind of silly that, like, I know Valve already has its own. We're not going to carry this particular kind of product in our store because we have standards. Well, it seems like they should have already worked out those standards with the people who will accept money or the transactional stuff. There shouldn't be things that are different. Like, but Bank of America's transactional standards are different than Valve standards. It's like, well,
I'm not sure what well, I haven't had a chance to really dive into it, but like, I'm not sure what the reasoning is at like the upper levels, because I can understand, okay, there's some fringe group that's upset about all this offensive stuff in games. Fine. But then the payment processors, okay, I can understand where Valve maybe doesn't want the heat that comes from that, but for the credit card companies to ban that, I mean, the demand for those kinds of games is still going to be around. It's like somebody's going to pick up the ball on that eventually, I would think. So.
Yeah. Well, I guess what I'm saying is that, like, Valve's deal with the payment processors should be sort of its own silo, right? Like, hey, payment processors, here's our standards for what kind of games we sell. And the payment processors should just say, yes, we accept that. It shouldn't be at odds with each other. Like, I totally understand, like, it's like some blatant S&M porn game or something. Valve should say, hey, we don't sell that kind of thing. And the payment processor should, like, we trust Valve's, judgment on what they sell. But if there's some other free market thing, there's no way you can force, a payment processor to handle that transaction. It's like, well, sorry. If you're going to go buy that kind of thing, you have to use this kind of payment processing. And
I think that's
it's very niche and weird.
I think the bigger issue in all this
is crypto.
It might actually create an opening for that, because it kind of shows like, oh yeah, I guess credit card companies do kind of control a lot of the world commerce, don't they?
Well,
so if they're saying,
the part I don't like.
Exactly. And that's a tall order to fix or work around, so. But now there's a prize waiting for everybody for the first company that can do it in a way that they can start selling censored games through it, because then whoever gets there first, they're going to be like what Valve is for, I guess, censored games or, adult content stuff.
Uncensored. Yeah. Censored games. Right. Well, anyway, that's a whole other thing. I more power to everything you're doing. I hope you get, I don't necessarily want you to have a second wind, because I think you deserve sort of a break to some extent.
I'm working towards it.
But like, I think it's great. You've been an amazing spokesperson, founder of Stop Killing Games. And it's a pleasure to talk to you and see your passion. And it's, you're staying on the straight and narrow, right? Stop Killing Games. It's a very understandable, righteous
single
cause.
issue. Single issue. Yeah.
Excellent.
And you want me to probably have some more free time too, because as I mentioned earlier, I've only played the first Halo. So now that I've talked to you, I kind of have to go through the remainders, at least just to hear the soundtracks.
Well, just go up through, I did 5 Halos, so you can stop after Halo Reach, which is 2010.
Yeah, no,
as
because
far as I'm concerned.
by coincidence, I'm not just saying this to you. By coincidence, I am a big kind of game soundtrack fan. So
Oh, okay,
I
cool.
listen to all kinds of game scores and music and that sort of thing.
Well, I had just to close this off, I had my one of my biggest lawsuit issues ended up sort of circling around the last big soundtrack that I created called Music of the Spheres, which was Destiny 1's soundtrack essentially. And there's a huge long story behind that, but that had to do with you know, corporations trying to suppress, creative work and art and not letting it be released, and my arguments about that. And that even Paul McCartney worked on that, and they were trying to suppress it. So like I've learned that the powers that be and the suits can make really, really stupid decisions based on
one quick question
greed.
while I have you here.
Sure.
As a composer, I've known this might be changing some now, but I like it when game music is like distinctive. It's like he has like a real tune to it or like a style. And I noticed in a lot of games that like the tune would get kind of like watered down to, I don't know how to describe it, but it's like it sounds like there might be a good tune there, but it's like it's playing in the next room over, and it's much more ambient, and not ambient in like a cool meditative, Zen kind of way, but just like it just sounds kind of distant where you're kind of struggling to hear the tune. Has that been like a trend in the industry? You know anything about?
Well, it's I could do an entire episode on this very thing.
Yeah,
So it has to do with creative choices. Who's in control of like, is the composer aware of what the game is? Is the composer actually working with designers to make the best kind of music for the levels or the environments or whatever it is? And a lot of times that's just not the way it is. The composers are not in the same space as the designers and the game makers. And so these two things just don't actually mesh very well. And so the only choice is to like, well, we got all this music, let's just turn it way down and have it way
so
back
it can fit
and,
anything, one size fits all kind of thing.
yeah, it's a one size fits all. And it's just like, oh, that's just not a satisfying experience for the player. I was not that guy. I was inside the team. I played through every game at every level of the game. I'm a gamer. When I designed music,
you have notes that stick in my head. Like now I haven't played much of 2, but I have the tune. I know the tune from it, like the pair, like dun 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 dun.
Yeah. Very good.
Like
Excellent.
That sticks out, and it's a great tune. So I mean, that's what I like from game soundtracks, stuff that have some personality to them.
Well, see, the thing is that this is my personal opinion, is that music has to work on its own first, and then you have to figure out a way to make it unobtrusively work inside the game. So there's some of it is you do that on purpose, you design it a certain way, or some of it is you find something that's good on its own and you figure the best way to use it and make it adaptable to what's happening in the game. But like what happens a lot of times, composers will be told, and they don't even get to play the game. They don't even know what the game is. They're just said, well, you can't make anything too distinctive. It can't stick out because it'll be distracting. And it's like, it's just self-defeating. It's like you're asking composers to make non-memorable music, and then they throw
that's like
it
the
in
worst
the game.
thing they can do.
Yeah,
in my
it's
opinion.
like, well, then a composer who is forced to do that, I don't blame them.
Yeah, no, I figure it's come from top
I
down.
blame the fact the process is like, we needed non-memorable music. I'm like, oh, well, then that's why nobody likes the music in your game. It has no character or personality.
Yeah, because even soundtracks, if some tracks I don't really care for, if they're distinctive, usually what happens is it comes around to one that I really do like. So I might get a sample. It's like, I don't like those 5 tracks, but these other 10 are amazing, So it's like, all right, just keep doing it, and you'll hit on some good ones,
Yeah, that's great that you actually were able to sing the Peril, I think it was called, to the point where I know exactly which one you're talking about. So that's great. That's in Halo 2, by the way. Which
I know.
Is based on...
I heard some of that one. But...
Oh, okay, all right. That goes 2004 now. We're talking 21 years ago. It's insane. I can't believe I'm still talking about this.
I know
stuff.
lots of games. I could do that all day. Well, I don't
Yeah.
want to keep your time anymore. So,
Oh, no, this is great. I try to keep it. We're a little bit long, but not too long. I know you've done a lot of great podcasts. I saw you on the Act Man show, and there's a lot of great stuff. But I wanted to talk to you about where you are, where the movement is, and I think there is hope for the future on this one, in my opinion. So
we for sure have a chance. And worst case scenario, we'll get answers. You know, we'll put an end to this gray area in the law. That's absolute worst case scenario, I think.
All right. Well, that sounds great. All right, Ross, thanks again. This was a great time, and we'll stay in touch and see what happens in the future.
Sure, and I'll get around to playing more Halo eventually.
Right. We'll talk about that later. Thanks.
See you.
All right. See you.